Dear Uncle Max, thank you for being here with us, and Karen and Richard, thank you. Peter, Fernanda, thank you for coming. I'm really lucky to be here with you, dear friends. It's a big honor for me and really inspiring new horizon that I'm here in Australia with you. Um, it's also a special and difficult moment at that time, so perhaps my lecture is not really appropriate for these days, but still let's hope the day will clear it out. Um, Here is the photo of the place where we met with Richard and Peter last year for the first time, and I was really somehow so surprised because I didn't know how to really come to the ground, how to hear the wind, how to look to the mountains. I somehow forgotten this living in the world we live today. So I'm really grateful for this friendship, I can say, that brought me also here, for these wonderful journeys that we made to the south and around Sydney, for you to opening me your homes and let me in and experience this wonderful relation you share with the nature and with each other. And this is something the most big you can do living on this earth. To be with the nature, understand it, feel it, be inspired by it, and with that be able to live in a community, respect each other, trust each other. This is a wonderful thing you are sharing, and please, Lindsay, Richard, Peter, Britt, Glenn, you really must go on with this. I'm here and we are all here to support this event and all the things you are doing to go on for all of us, for all young people who are coming, and for the world around us. Because the world we live in today is a very superficial world. It's a world of telephones, it's a world of strong communication, it's a world of noise, of travels, of being distracted all the time. So where is the place today that we found ourselves? Where the place where we can find a way to each other? Where is the place we can find some silence to think and see the nature, how it's changing, and learn from it? I think it's up on us architects also to establish that kind of places. The places where each other, as different as we are, will find himself or herself, and will find and hear the voices of each other, and will find silence to rethink and place himself on the ground. Last year, 2 years ago, we were invited to present our work in Venice Biennale by the curators, and then we started to think in a way how to show what we are really doing. And we found this beautiful quotation by the poet Brodsky, and he wrote that every surface craves dust because dust is the flesh of time. And as a poet said, time's very flesh and blood. And that's what we are working with. In a way, we work with buildings that are existing, we transform them, and we bring them to our time to enable a shelter there for our days, for people who live in our time and on our place. That's why we called our project Unveiling the Hidden. That means bringing forward our thoughts and our, let's say, gestures. The place I come from is very different from your place. That's why I was asking myself, what are the things that I can really share with you, with this beautiful natural environment? what can I really bring you to learn out of it? Our country is a very small country. It's big as your Lake Erie, or how is it called? It's as big. That means you need 2 hours to travel across. We are only 2 million people, and we are almost everywhere surrounded by mountains. So these vertical mountains shape and frame our views. On contrary, Australia is with its open, big horizon, something very different for me. And that's an image for the place where I was born. This is a view from my window. That's a winter view. That is a window full of structured trees, white and black photography of the forest in the wintertime. And I grew up in a very natural surrounding. This is a photo I don't show very often, but that's me on the left. I grew up on trees. And that's why I really love this open space. When I started to lecture, I realized that I have to go back to the images and experiences of my childhood. And I think this is for all of us very important to think and remember how was the space when we experienced it when we were children, when we had no borders in our heads done by the schools and all the people expecting from us different things. And at the time we were breathing, touching the trees and enjoying really the freedom of the childhood. This is a view of my village, how it was. It was taken by an old uncle of mine. In my country, you have peaks and you have valleys, and in the middle of the valleys, they placed usually the vertical as a sign to lead you to the place where you live. This picture does not exist anymore. There was an architect who built a hotel in front of it. I don't want to show it because I think it's not worth to show it to you. But the tree is gone. It was cut. This image does not exist anymore. We destroy our memories. And as Richard said so beautifully the other day, memories are our anchors. They tie us to the place where we come from, to what we are. And therefore, we need to keep them, struggle for them in one way or the other. In the book I mentioned, and the book is here, I leave it to you. We were discussing 15 different topics that we try to think about them while working. Of course, you always get a brief, you always get a side, but that's not what we are really interested in. We try to think about the place, about this power, about this strength, about the light, about its essential elements. And these are some places of the country I come from, these winter places, of these strong vertical rocks and the valleys in between. And you see here so beautifully how people placed the spots just in the middle of this inclined glacier did this space. And of course we have also the peaks, and our people identify themselves strongly with these peaks. These are really high mountains. That's the highest peak. And here is a short story how this peak, in fact, got a small house on its top in the past. Now it's been 200 years since it was built, and these were the first brave climbers who got up, and everybody wants to get there once at least. But this small house was no importance. That's not really a heritage. No, but it's a kind of a symbol in all our people, and it was rotten. It was really not in a good condition. So they decided to take it down and repair it. And it happened last year. And everybody in my country was following what is going on with this small shelter. It was on television, it was reported, people recorded it. Everybody was worried, how is it going to be and how is it going to get back? And finally, here it is, back again, waiting for your visit, to have a look. From here, you can see all my country. So small it is. And from the other side, that's the Mediterranean coast. You can see the country, the mountain as well, in a good weather. So my country is quite diverse. It was, is this stretched between the Alps and the Mediterranean Sea. And if the Alps are a strong vertical element, the sea is a very horizontal plane. It's an open horizon. It's water which connects us also with Australia in a certain way. And between those two poles, we try to place ourselves. Between a very rich culture that built this place, for instance, this is a roof of a shelter built without any plaster, just stone one above each other, of masons that built the places in Mediterranean. This is a place where I would like to take you, Richard. This is a place between two beaches, as we saw on the Palm Beach, that is marked just by one tower from which you can see on both sides. And hopefully Peter will do another workshop there. This place is also a very strong emotional place, this Mediterranean. This landscape is very dry. It's very difficult to live here. It's defined by strong stone walls that keep the ground or lead the pathways. And also there they had the fires. And those fires, a couple of years ago, captured 11 brave firemen, and they died, also young guys. And for that to remember, a great Croat architect, he defined a project, how to remember this, by placing 11 crosses laying on the ground to mark where these people were found. And they didn't know how to do it because the crosses are 25 meters long. And they started to build the first one with a society that teaches people how to do them. And suddenly, from all the country of Croatia, people started to come and help this building. And through this, a kind of a national catharsis happened of remembrance of people who helped them to save this island. Our country had a difficult history. We were not very luckily placed. We are between different nations. We had the Romans. We have Slavic people. There were Celts living there, escaped then at the times to the mountains. We have Venice. We had Austria above us. We were part of Yugoslavia. We had many wars. And you know, every war breaks. It breaks history. It breaks the flow of time. It breaks memory. It asks you to forget the things. It asks you to forget your belongings. And it's very hard to live in that way. It's very hard to let your roots grow again. For that is what we do somehow, try to keep this memory, try to take care of our heritage, whether it is natural, whether it is built heritage. So here are our topics, more again, of light and silence, somehow partly also in some of our projects, of the space that we try to establish, the open space in between, the running space in between in our buildings. And through this, to tell the stories of the past, of the buildings we work with, the stories to pass them through materials, the building traditions, the art in the landscape. That's a beautiful sculpture placed in our landscape by a sculpture project that happened 20 years ago, when every year 3 artists from different countries of the whole world gathered in 4 places in Slovenia. One they built out of stone, the second they built out of wood, and one they built of metal, and one of concrete, and they were placed all around the public space. And through this place was defined, as here with this tree that we kept in one of our projects. And with all the layers we try to bring forward through the buildings we do, the layers that tell us the time, how it passed. Through this, of course, with all the renovation projects we do, the idea is very important. The idea of the flowing space, or the idea of just one room. The architect I started to work with was an architect of a wall. That's one of his first projects. Just breaks in the wall and the building, the program hidden in between. So the walls are, in a way, the elements we work with a lot. But we see walls not as boundaries, but just as elements shaping the space and allowing and creating the flow. Of course, in that sense, all the transitions are very important. How to let people enter, how to let the light in, how the movement starts, and how the views are established from one room into a chapel here, or from this school into the outdoor space. At the end, the topic for me very important is the topic of a horizon, of an open horizon which leads us to see the city above us. So in all this, I always question myself in this world, where I am and who am I, really. Can I really do what I am? Can architecture be what you are? I think that is very important. I didn't know that when I started, when I was a student. Now I try to work, and through this work to be myself in a way. These are some of my projects. Mostly all the projects are dealing with the existence, with the existing environment, with the existing buildings. We mostly don't build anew. We use what is there. But all what is there mostly was in a bad condition, was rebuilt, built in, densed, completely densified. And therefore, we try to free this space. We try to reorganize this space, recreate it back again for our time, for the people to let in, for the life to enter. This is my first project. It's in Ljubljana. This is the city of Ljubljana. You are all very kindly welcome. Here is a castle hill, and there is another flower hill. And in between flows the river. This river makes a curve and a very dense spot. Between those two hills, there are the Alps, and here is the Mediterranean. It was a settled by the Romans. Here somewhere was a Roman castra. And this is the city center of Ljubljana. And just here in the center, beside the three bridges, I was asked to do my first project. I was worried, of course, and it was a chapel. I'm not a believer, so how to do this? It was a competition, and not for a chapel first, it was for shops down below this Franciscan monastery. I did this competition. I didn't win this competition. And I don't know, somehow, this Franciscan brother, he decided to ask me to go on with this. I started to talk with the people who wanted to do here shops, and I saw it's going to be really a tough work, because shops, you know, they look always for money and now for culture. So fortunately, this father, he changed his mind. He said he would like to do here a chapel, a place to stop, a place of silence, a place of meditation. So the problem and the question was how to break this wall, how to do an entrance here at this part you see, because this wall is binding together the church and the monastery. So I was dealing a lot how to open the wall. Behind the wall there were 2 rooms, just 2 modest rooms like that. So I decided to connect them with one wall to create a certain niche and enter over a ramp from the back side where there is another wooden wall and look towards the altar place. So that's a very simple scheme, a model, and this is how it is. The entrance with a door that is just the continuation of the wall. With the light, how it comes in, you go a bit down, turn around. This is a simple wooden wall with a small room to speak with one person, with some fragments from the history of the building, a simple cross and a door outside with the light that can enter through it, and here you go back again to the Rashi Street. This church is not working anymore. This chapel is closed for years. They're now going to do a bakery out of it. So that's how time changes. But by the same priest, I was asked to come to another village. He was transformed. They move them all the time around. They can't grow their own roots anywhere. And it's a sad thing, I think. So he was asked to go here and to take care of this area, because this was a small village on the western part of Slovenia where suddenly Mary appeared, and since then this is the most well-known pilgrimage place in our country. And people gather here on the 15th of August. They create an altar in front of the church. There is an open square, and the square was done by one of our most well-known architects, Jože Plečnik. And there were some walls which defined this square. There is a view to the highest mountain you see there behind, and these were the walls. This was the existing state, quite not in a good shape. These are his famous stairs, one side positive, one side negative, and the walls that are quite typical for his work. One morning I was here, the light was really beautiful, the light through the foggy morning. So we were asked, in fact, to make a large square, to destroy all these walls. The priest said, we need more room. And we felt this is a pity. Therefore, we proposed to keep this wall, to keep this part that is a bit higher and define this square straight in front of the church. So we have one open space and one space in the shadow, a bit above, more intimate. The third one here in front, and the shops and everything they have moved out of the square. It was a very simple proposal to build it everything of the same material, very quiet, white. But the biggest question was where to place the altar. We had the church with its facade. We had the Triglav mountain, Tree Peak mountain. We had the walls that were created by Plečnik. So where to do it, not to destroy all the qualities of the place. So we decided to put the altar behind this wall on the northern side, put it on the back, create some storage here, and make a big door that just opens for the event. We were thinking a lot about materials. We always do that kind of collections of materials, put them together, think about the existing, the new ones, its treatment, and so on. And suddenly, while we were working, we found a piece of that kind of altar on the church. There is a similar one as a wooden closet of Plečnik, also in another church in Slovenia, and it's just a wooden closet. When you open it, inside is a Carrara marble stone. And that's a similar thing placed on the church in front of which we were working. So we decided in a way that our altar will open the door like these Gothic altars did, and that something what is going to happen inside is going to be something different than outside. So this is the construction site. you'll see later in my project, this is a very important way of doing, because the process is something most intriguing that what we do. Because through the process, things change. Things happen and need to be considered. So this wall on the right was reinforced. The square was completely empty, and here you see this door of the altar. This door is just a metal frame and a plywood door, 2 times 5 meter, that then opens like this, quite simply. And inside is a birchwood cladding and the light that comes from the back. We did some furniture, and here you have some connection views. We removed the entrances to the back side. So there are just stairs going out of the building, and the renovated squares and the park here above. Next project was quite a difficult one. We had to do a renovation of a manor in the town of Maribor. This is a town on the north. It's quite close where I was born. And this is a manor here in the medieval core of the city. So we were thinking a lot what this really is, something special about this building. Because the building looked like that. It had not really any very important elements except this coat of arms. The courtyard was in this shape. The rooms inside were really badly transformed. But suddenly we noticed that the light is coming into the space very nicely, smoothly on the walls from the southern side of the courtyard. And we decided to connect all the rooms in a one pathway, or different pathways that could move around from the northern side, from the courtyard side, or from the upper side through the building. For that, we needed to demolish many interior walls. You can't see it very well, but we had to remove lots of materials. Through that, establish connections through the rooms in the ground and in the first floor. Suddenly, the rooms that were treated as apartments before, divided in very small units, were connected in a one flowing space, which also in the section was connected downwards and upwards. It was not easy because there were not information enough, and the building was strictly protected as a local monument. So we had to work all the time with a big team of people. And slowly, by cleaning, we found also many things and removed layers of plaster. And through that, suddenly, the light started to enter into these rooms again. So you see how they were reshaped in a way that we somehow refound back again their form, how it was. For all these public rooms, of course, you need all this equipment, heating in our areas, fresh air, electricity, and there are mostly the questions how to do it, not to destroy the beauty of the existence. So we put them all behind these black walls, behind these dark walls, and we left everything what was found existing in this white material, white pavement, and white plaster. We found another door going down to the cellar. This is the door on the left that was found and how it was then presented. And through this, we created a new pathway also into the underground spaces and a bridge passing over it through a vaulted cellar that was there. We found an old pavement. We didn't want it to touch it, so we lifted our pathway a little bit above so that people can see different layers of the time. It was quite a hard project. We needed just 1 year to plan it and execute it, and this was the team of worried partners and heritage and the workers. But the workers who do, they're always smiling. They're really such a happy and strong and positive energy. Their company broke down afterwards. It was really a tough time, just before crisis. But if you see their faces, they are really trusting us and following us and doing for the society. This was a public project. It's now a cultural center in Maribor, and this is how these rooms work. how the equipment was stored behind these walls, and how the light slowly started to enter back again into these clean spaces. We left all the traces we found as this Gothic porch. We don't know is there something behind or not. We couldn't go with the project further. And this is the tree in the courtyard, something that we always like to keep. The next project is placed beside the same river on the east of Slovenia, in a beautiful countryside that is quite very flat. It's a rural countryside, and we were asked to come here and do a renovation of this space. So you see a castle here, and this was a service building, an outdoor service building of the castle in a quite bad condition. No really important traces, just some arches or just an addition done in the 50s. So they asked us to do this for very little money. They wanted to do a museum and a music school. And when I heard for this program, I said, of course, I do this also for nothing, because I knew that this is something for the community. By the first visit, we found some interesting spots that inside showed how beautiful these spaces really were. And especially the square in front of it was very nice, because it opened towards the town. So here you see the town's main square that is here through this X connected with the courtyard of the building that is like in a U shape, waiting and making a back to the people who can gather here around this tree in this space. So we placed on the left side the music school, on the right side the museum, and used all these different rooms that we found for different kind of programs. For instance, for presenting the archaeology or some findings from medieval times inside this museum. And we created an open pathway that is moving through all the spaces, going up in the first floor and coming back again, in a way, a certain space loop that visits all these different rooms. And for that, we needed to empty all the added walls to create a more open flow through the building. In fact, we were not allowed to build anything outside the borders because of straight archaeological protection. And the site looks quite roughly, always in the winter, putting away all these added things and demolishing stuff just to bring and empty the space and find the spaces as they were first existing. This is the light entering into the main entrance hall of the music school. And this is the music school, how it looks now. And this is the room that is common for both programs, for the museum and for the school. This is another room with existing columns, then later presented like this. And this is the entrance to the museum. The museum is in fact an archaeological museum, and the idea was to create small spaces, small places with the findings that we had. So daily life scenes. And they were then, by them, they were attached drawings that we found by a master from a painter who was born in this town. And he did some drawings how people were living that day, so we created them around the findings and placing them. We were doing a lot also with the exhibition. And thinking as well here what the materiality is going to be. On that side, there are many things built out of brick, and these rural houses are slowly disappearing, so we decided to use brick because we were asked to have the brick tiles on the roof as well. We used them also for all the new interventions. So all the new walls are built out of brick, and through this filtering the light into the exhibition rooms or in the waiting room at the music school. So you see the roof and the walls, they are all out of the same material. And here in front, they create this outdoor square connected with the castle behind as a place for gathering, for public events, for things that this community can enjoy together. And now I show you just the renovation that was mentioned. This is the renovation of Plečnik's house. Plečnik was one of our biggest masters. He was born in the 19th century, and he first became a carpenter. Then he went to Graz and later to Vienna, and this is a photo from Vienna. And I like this photo very much because he's still smiling. He was, in fact, a very closed person, very conservative, religious. And here he is with Otto Wagner sitting on the left. Plečnik is the second from the right in his school. His later photos were like that, always posing very seriously. He was a very tough professor, not like the ones you have here in front of you. I got something of this heritage from here because also my professor were quite the heirs of this school, quite a tough school. But in the 20s, he moved back to Ljubljana. He was first in Vienna working, then in Prague, and then he moved to Ljubljana. And now you see, some people were asking where this really Ljubljana is. You see there Vienna, this is Venice, and Ljubljana is somehow in the middle. This is the Mediterranean, and our country is in the form of a chicken, so they are joking, but it's this small country. This is the Alps, this is the plain where the last building was, and here we have just a short coast of 20 kilometers, something. Very small. But Ljubljana was much influenced by Vienna and by Venice. So those two cities, of course, architects from Italy came and built buildings in Ljubljana, and our architects studied first in Vienna. So there are lots of, it's a mixture of influences from Roman ruins to Baroque period. And of course, Plečnik wanted in a way to bind these things together. Always, our architects, in fact, were always looking towards Mediterranean. Their heart was somehow there, to the sea, to the south, to the Mediterranean. And Plečnik, what he did in our city, in fact, is really important because he introduced to our city an urban scale. That means he created open spaces that connect from the house where he was born, his church, some public buildings to the square, or from bridges up to the castle and on the castle behind. And most important and the most appreciated, the one along the river. So, although for me it's really strange, he was really a very closed person, living by himself, never married, like this. And what he offered to our city is an open public space for us to live in, to enjoy, to sit together, or be just alone along the river. So, I don't know how this really happened, but we are happy to have this. Here is one of my favorite projects done by him. In fact, it's a transformation of a ruin that I was explaining you, Richard, the other time. It was a very small ruin on a very small hill, on the castle hill, and an alley of trees leading there. And what he did, he shaped the terrain very geometrically. He shaped the hill, and of course he wanted to use the ruin. He shaped the hill like a cone, and he added on this ruin another modern bridge of his own. So here you see the approach, how you come, the alley of trees, the shaped terrain on the side, very, very clear, and this new intervention. With this new intervention, he connected the hill and the old part, the ruin. So you can circulate around, you can go above, you can move however you want. It is, in a way, a free running space on different levels. And here you go through the walls, you come up the level of the hill, and when you step on this bridge, you follow the bridge, you then come to this open horizon that brings you with the view to the city back in front of you. He created many monumental spaces, open, wide spaces, but still very pleasant to be there, to sit along them. Or spaces to say goodbye. This is our cemetery, the forest of columns and small pavilions. But his house, where he moved in 21, was a very small and modest house. It was bought by his brother, and it was really a very, very simple suburban house. This is its plan. It was in fact just one building with a doorway and a cellar. And then he moved first to the upper floor. Then slowly, the upper floor was here, just 3 rooms. Then he slowly started to add additions. First addition, second addition, then the third and the fourth. And this seems to be our tradition as well, but our additions nowadays are not so nice. So he added also a small entrance room and a canopy, and this you see how the house looked, and that's him in front of the house. Later he bought another house on the lower part, on the south, and through this he got a great access to the garden, and he could build also a winter garden there at the back, and here you see this winter garden. So the house looked like that when it was built. When he died in 1957, he was already a well-known architect, and his nephew got the house, and there were photos taken of the house. But when we started to work, the house looked mostly like that, and I said, what do we need to do it? It's perfect, it's okay. So I was a bit afraid what might happen. You know, every renovation can remove the dust and take away the spirit. So it's, in a way, a dangerous thing. What the city that is now running this small museum wanted to do, they wanted to get also this room, and through this to connect all the spaces together and create here an entrance place for all the visitors. Because the visits here are run differently. They run by a guide, and just a group of 7 people can move through the building with a guide who explains you in 1 hour the whole story of the architect. So the rooms look like that. They were kept from the 50s as they were. So you can see how he lived, how he worked. He slept and worked in the same room now, and some other people also do. So the house is protected as a state monument. That means that there is done a lot of research and lots of protection and lots of evaluation. One thing important, one room not so important. So we got a plan that had here in the middle a toilet. And then when we started to work, we transformed this plan. We say we don't want to have a toilet here in the middle. Here is the entrance room. So this room is open to 4 sides and can receive all the visitors that can circulate around. That was something we made, and we connected this room with an open room. We placed here the small workshop room, toilets here on the side, and a small museum back. And this is the main part of the house. This is the most protected. That's the part that was left mostly everything on its place. So on the upper floor, we also wanted to connect the rooms together to be running around, especially on this right side, to create a kind of a flow for all the visitors. Therefore, we needed to demolish things, work carefully with all these plans for the facade. And slowly this facade started to be a bit cleaned by the very careful restorators. We removed the entrance to this side to be open on the part that was transformed by Plečnik. I'm sorry. And we transformed also the back facade. We removed these big windows to clean it more, to present the winter garden. Unfortunately, we had to remove the greenery, which I found very sad. We were trying to keep it as long as possible, but the cluster below was not touching the walls anymore. So at the end, we had to protect there and so on. And we put the roots of the plant on the side, and they picked these branches to grow new. But the roots, after 2 years, they started to grow back again. When we put them back again, from those roots, the plant is growing on the house again. And mostly all these interior spaces, they were just partly reinforced, partly cleaned. All the things were removed and brought back, and we placed the light above as it was, and with this column in front of the window. The winter garden was cleaned, and now it is like, it's supposed to be just the wine leaves should grow over it. This is the kitchen where the radiators were removed. It was mostly done after the photo set it was, and his working area with his table. It was everything brought back with all his tools and glasses and so on. And here is the staircase that was leading you up to the first rooms where he inhabited. These are very simple, modest 3 rooms, one behind each other in an X connected through the doors. And so we refurbished and we renewed just this attic space into some spaces where these custodians can work preparing the exhibition. But most of the work was done here in the entrance part, where this couple before lived, and they had a car here in this patio. So we demolished and started to demolish carefully, step by step, all the things that were added later. And through this, we found many different clusters, layers of different times. And we got, in a way, finally, this entrance to the shop with a wall that can move in front of it and close the space for the winter time. We found many different and interesting traces, and one interesting story goes with this door. Most of the doors here were like that, you know, and they are all protected completely. They should be done the same way back again. When we started to scratch off the plaster, we found that this door is a mask of another door. And we asked them to keep it as it was, this door, and place the mask back again and not cover it with any paint. So this is how the door looks today. It has a small door inside this door, so then you can have a look inside, and opens the door into the part of the exhibition, which was also placed in one room with some parts and the other with some other. And also this wall can open and lead you to the main room with his models. This is a room devoted to Ljubljana's project with a big model of the city and some photos of his buildings. And this is the shop, how it was done at the entrance part. Where you enter, you see the patio at the back, his photo and some timeline. And of course, this is the theme. The theme is a very important part of the project. This is Masha, my partner, working on the project, and the curators of the exhibition, and a lady from the Heritage, some helpers from the Restoration Center, and here Matthias, my also colleague from the office, placing the exhibition. So this is how the building receives you today and how it works today, because it's very important for public buildings to live further on, start living in what we do. And here is the promotion of a guidebook of Ljubljana by one of our ski jumpers. Here is a public discussion going on. They have really a wonderful team that takes care somehow that life goes on in the building, not just a silent museum static there, but also discussion on architecture, as well as we try to bring them also to our school where we work, exhibit with our students, and where he also did the windows like that to open the school more into the environment, into the city. And my final small images of the intervention we did on Biennale last 2 years ago, tried to present what we in fact tried to do. And this is to free the existing space that we get, to intervolve into the space a kind of a pathway that allows the visitors to circulate, as here on this installation, between the elements, between the existing walls, by that bringing them some materiality from our place and connecting and always trying to establish a certain dialogue with the existing, as here. Working with the materials by hands, shaping these voids, and of course opening the space for people to live in and to enjoy a certain freedom of inhabiting the space. These are some of my colleagues at this project. On the back side of it, we presented those topics that are here in the book, but mostly what we started with this project, because Biennale was called Free Space, we presented also first a building that is very important for me, and this is here on this panel. This panel was called The Ancestors. That means the architects who worked before us in our space, Splečnikis or Ravnikar or the other Ravnikar, or this one that is called Oto Njugovec. And this is the roof that I sent for the first thing for the Biennale exhibition. And this is a roof that explains one of, for me, the most important topics of the work I try to do is the freedom of space. I think this roof is for me a kind of a symbol of that, as lots of architecture I saw here in Australia. And I think this is the important, very important thing, is the freedom, how we feel as free inside our shelters. And this roof is just a shelter. There is a ruin of a small church below it, and that's a roof that is hanging and standing just on two wooden pillars, overhanging this beautiful horizontal landscape of the eastern part of Slovenia. Oto Njugovec, I devote this to him. He's a great man, joining tradition of Slovenia and modern architecture in a free space. Thank you very much.